next 10 minutes or so, I'll tell you why I pursued this research, how I conducted it, what I found and what I believe that to mean, and what I think we should all take away from this research. Marine ecotourism is considered a responsible ocean-based tourist industry rooted in conservation, education, and local benefits. It's nested in what is known to be a blue economy, developed in 2012 by Small Island Developing States, or SIDS. The blue economy is an ocean-based sustainable development framework that better suits the socioeconomic and environmental needs of SIDS. And it has three key pillars: economic, social, and environmental. And the key piece here is that an industry cannot truly be considered part of a blue economy if it does not prioritize social sustainability, that being dimensions of equity, well-being, or justice, for example. In island regions where large tourist attraction often coincides with infrastructural limitations due to isolation from global markets, geographic isolation, or the reliance on a narrow resource base, for example, there are concerns as to whether or not existing blue economies can strike the necessary balance between well-being and development. And to explore this paradox, I've taken a particular interest in Bocas del Toro. Bocas is a beautiful archipelago off the Caribbean coast of Panama, where 95% of the regional economy is made up of tourism. And although over 200,000 individuals visit Bocas district every year, the Bocas del Toro province is still considered the poorest in the nation. And according to the Tourism Authority of Panama, or the ATP as I'll call it, tourist and public infrastructure in Bocas is considered suboptimal. As you can see here on this map created using census data, the red areas denote regions where 80 to 100% of households do not have access to running water and will instead access it through public or private wells, rain catchments, or by purchasing jugs of water. And the lesser green areas denote regions where 80 to 100% of households do have access to running water, typically connected to the public system managed by IDAM, the Institute of Sewage and Aqueduct Infrastructure. And although Bocas is not a distinct nation, it does have some of the same characteristics as SIDS. And so my research really looks at what are the implications of pursuing a blue economy rooted in marine ecotourism on water insecure island regions. Doing so involved three research objectives: documenting local experience with water shortage and water insecurity, as well as the perceived role of government and the tourism industry, examining whether or not water shortages has had an impact on policy, plans, or investment in the region, and exploring the management implications of my findings. Doing so involved a multi-method approach where I conducted 16 semi-structured interviews across a 1-month period in Bocas this past May. Across 3 islands, I interviewed members of the Chamber of Tourism, business owners, restaurant owners, day workers, and concerned citizens. I also observed 5 events related to water tourism, including visiting ecotourist attractions, waiting in line at public wells, observing public demonstrations or road blockades related to water, and attending meetings with EDAM. Also, given the pace at which this case, it's a bit of a tongue twister, the pace at which the case was developing, I also reviewed government policies and plans and local news articles, which are some of the only published pieces on this issue in Bocas, to provide more context to my findings. And through an inductive constant comparison analysis, I created a timeline of events, plans, policies, actors, to really serve as the foundation of my findings. So in 2000, we see a tourism boom where the economy in Bocas del Toro shifted from that was dominated by the United Fruit Company, or UFC, not the sports affiliation. The UFC's banana industry started to dwindle down, and there was more global interest in Bocas, so we see a tourism boom. In 2001 and 2009, we see the emergence of IDAM and the ATP as key governance actors in both water and tourism, respectively. In 2013, we see a massive investment from the Inter-American Development Bank, and in 2015, we see the development of the National Plan for Water Security. Unfortunately, in 2017 and 2019, Bocas faced 2 water shortages, where issues of drought and infrastructure coincided to make accessing water extremely difficult in the region. Following this, there are 2 key pieces of policy to look out for: the National Ocean Policy and the National Plan or the Master Plan for Sustainable Tourism Development, which both have goals of creating a more competitive ecotourist sector across Panama as a whole. Unfortunately, again in 2022 and 2023, during my stay, Bocas faced devastating water shortages, declared environmental emergencies by the Ministry of the Environment, where accessing water, let alone drinking water, was again extremely difficult. At this same time in 2022, Bocas received $2 million from the government for large-scale infrastructural developments, and just this past July, Panama became the first country to sign on to the UN Water Capacity Development Initiative. Unfortunately, as I will describe next, some of the participants I spoke with have yet to see any of the benefits of these plans, policies, and investments in their communities. In teasing out a finding through all of this information, one quote really stuck with me, and as I was speaking with a business owner and I asked her what the largest industry in Bocas was, she said tourist or tourism, but it grew alone and it grows alone. Overall, I found that there's a critical disconnect between the Government of Panama's aspirations for ecotourism and infrastructural development in Bocas and the realities and the needs of those who actually live there, where communities are far more concerned with the development of essential public utilities and services like water or electricity, for example. And while discerning the extent to which marine ecotourism may undermine these efforts was a clear research objective of mine, what's interesting is that my findings do not draw a direct causal relationship between marine ecotourism and a lack of water security rather. But instead, what I and my supervisors found most interesting is the perception that the Government of Panama is choosing to develop tourism over that of water, and how these perceptions shape the realities of those in Bocas and their feelings towards sustainable tourism development and well-being. It should also be mentioned that in the case of Bocas del Toro, colonialism and systemic racism can manifest as persistent disadvantages in water access, where plans and policies are subject to embedded racial hierarchies, serving the needs of some but not others. So I'll now talk through three key themes that can help further contextualize this finding. The first being accountability. Interviews suggest that there is chronic frustration with the lack of follow-through on the Government of Panama in government plans to improve community well-being. For one example, one participant mentioned that investment in the region is like ice in the sun. Nobody knows where it goes. The literature suggests that this could be indicative of an urban bias, where urbanized areas or highly populated areas like Panama City, for example, have far more expedited plans than internationally peripheral regions like Bocas. Locals also felt that government turnover may be unintentionally hindering the momentum of plans, as the National Ocean Policy, for example, has a 30-year horizon and far outlives a singular presidential stay. Blue et al. 2023 refers to this as having political uncertainty, which can effectively hinder political effectiveness. Next, pervasive in all the interviews I conducted was a large mistrust of the government. I don't look to the government for water, said one business owner, I pray to God. While this study does not serve to prove government corruption, the results in the interview suggest that the mere thought of government corruption can greatly shape perceptions of sustainable tourism and its ability to improve community well-being. Additionally, past handlings of water shortages have led to an increased reliance on community rather than government in times of need, where persistent water shortages may signal to communities that government action is ineffective, eroding trust and further support of potentially beneficial plans in the future, perhaps. Lastly, as I mentioned, there is a perception that the government chooses to prioritize tourism over public infrastructure. And while a more vast and intensive study would be required to prove or disprove this accusation, the data suggests objectively that tourism in Bocas is indeed more developed than that of water infrastructure. I offer here that the sheer profitability of ecotourism serves as an inherent incentive for the Government of Panama to continue to develop restaurants, hotels, or Airbnbs, for example, over that of public infrastructure or water infrastructure. Moreover, tourism is far more enticing to outside investors. Unfortunately here, theoretically, if tourism continues to grow without bringing infrastructure with it, the region will eventually hit its tourism carrying capacity, or the point known as over-tourism. The silver lining here is that it could potentially incentivize the ATP to build up water infrastructure or other public utilities in the region to maintain tourism for the number of tourists that are visiting each year. to maintain a economically viable business model. Overall, this research has shown that this is not strictly a matter of ecotourism and water, but more importantly, the underlying issues that shape the nature of growth in island regions, as well as who proves to benefit from a sustainable blue economy when recognizing socio-historical contexts. And as the Government of Panama continues to pursue a Blue Panama and the global community continues to adopt a blue economy framework, there is a need to recenter and effectively internalize issues of social sustainability, namely that of social equity. As per Sing It All 2023, this can be done by an anti-inequity approach, which involves addressing the processes that perpetuate inequities as a tool to prioritize the needs who have historically been left behind by plans and policies. Moving forward, I'm looking forward to publishing this research alongside my amazing supervisors to keep the academic conversation going, but more importantly, creating a community document that is public-facing for the Chamber of Tourism to use in discussions with the ATP. In order to ensure that community needs and perceptions do not effectively fall through the cracks, there is a need to continue community-centric research in the space of the blue economy and establish development strategies that adequately address the inherent barriers to well-being and social sustainabilities so that blue economic development and marine ecotourism does not, in fact, grow alone. I would like to send the biggest gracias to those who shared their stories with me and welcomed me into their homes and restaurants. This research is for them and would not be possible without them. Also to my incredible supervisors, Dr. Will Schwartz, Dr. Sid Scott, who I hope is online somewhere, it's early in Panama, and also to Ricardo for being my second reader and providing his support. Lastly, to my family who's online, my Matt family who's here in front of me, and my Bocas family, also online. Thank you so much for all of your support. I personally would not have been able to make it through these 16 months without all of you. So thank you very much for your time.